You have probably tried to build a habit before. Maybe you decided to exercise every morning. Or read before bed. Or drink more water. Or spend less time on your phone. You started with good intentions. You kept it up for a few days. Maybe a week. Maybe even 2. Then something happened. A busy day. A bad night's sleep. A disruption to your routine. A moment of weakness on a tired evening. And the habit disappeared. Like it was never there. You told yourself you would restart next Monday. Next month. After things settle down. After life gets less busy. But life never gets less busy. And next Monday has a way of arriving as just another regular Monday. If this sounds familiar, the problem is not your willpower. It is not your character. It is not some fundamental flaw that makes you different from people who seem to maintain good habits effortlessly. The problem is that you are trying to build a habit using the wrong model of how habits actually work. Most people think habits are about decisions. About choosing, each day, to do the right thing. But that is not what a habit is. A habit is precisely the opposite of a decision. A habit is a behavior that happens automatically. Without deliberation. Without effort. Without will. And understanding how that automaticity actually forms changes everything about how you try to build it. Let us start with the brain. Deep inside the human brain, there is a structure called the basal ganglia. It is one of the oldest parts of the brain in evolutionary terms. It controls movement, coordination, and crucially, the formation of automatic behaviors. When you first learn to drive, every action requires conscious attention. Checking mirrors. Pressing the clutch. Judging the gap. Your prefrontal cortex, the thinking part of your brain, is working hard. But after months of practice, something changes. You drive home from work and barely remember the journey. Your hands turned the wheel. Your foot worked the pedals. But your conscious mind was elsewhere. The skill moved from your prefrontal cortex to your basal ganglia. It became automatic. It became a habit. This is what neuroscientists call chunking. The brain takes a repeated sequence of actions and packages them into a single automatic unit. A chunk. And once a chunk is stored in the basal ganglia, it fires reliably when triggered. Without effort. Without decision. Without the drain on your willpower. This is the goal of habit formation. Not to try harder each day. But to use repetition to move a behavior from conscious effort into automatic territory. But how does that process actually happen? And how long does it take? A researcher named Philippa Lally at University College London studied this question directly. She followed 96 people over 12 weeks as they tried to establish new daily habits, things like eating a piece of fruit with lunch or going for a walk after dinner. She tracked how automatic each behavior felt for each person over time. Her findings challenged one of the most common myths about habits. You may have heard that it takes 21 days to build a habit. That number has been repeated so many times it feels like a fact. It is not. It came from anecdotal observations by a plastic surgeon in the 1960s. Not from research on behavior. Lally's actual data showed that on average, a behavior took 66 days to become automatic. And the range was wide. Some simple behaviors became automatic in as few as 18 days. More complex behaviors took up to 254 days. There is no magic number. But there is a principle. Automaticity builds gradually with repetition. Early repetitions create the largest gains. Later repetitions slow down as automaticity approaches its ceiling. And missing one day occasionally did not significantly damage the process. What this means practically is important. The first few weeks of a new habit feel hard because they are hard. Your prefrontal cortex is doing real work. You are making a deliberate decision every single day. But if you keep going, that effort gradually decreases. The behavior begins to feel easier. More natural. Less like a choice and more like something you simply do. The hard part is surviving the early weeks long enough to get there. So how do you actually build a habit that sticks? There is a framework that researchers and psychologists keep coming back to. It is simple. 3 parts. A cue, a routine, and a reward. The cue is the trigger. It is the signal that tells your brain to initiate the behavior. The routine is the behavior itself. The action you want to make automatic. The reward is what follows. The signal that tells your brain this loop is worth repeating. Charles Duhigg, who wrote The Power of Habit, described this as the habit loop. And it reflects how the basal ganglia actually encodes behavior. Your brain is constantly scanning for patterns. When a behavior is followed by a reward, the brain flags that sequence as worth remembering. Worth doing again. Over time, the cue alone begins to trigger the craving for the reward. And the routine happens almost automatically in between. This is why bad habits are so hard to break. They have a complete loop. A cue, a routine, a reward. The brain has encoded that sequence reliably. And it is why good habits are hard to build. You have to build that loop from scratch, through repetition, until it becomes as automatic as the bad ones. Here is what this looks like in practice. If you want to build a habit of reading every evening, do not just decide to read more. Give it a cue. Something specific and consistent. After I make my evening tea. After I brush my teeth. After I sit in this chair. Give it a routine. 10 pages. 20 minutes. Whatever is small enough to be consistent. Give it a reward. Not a manufactured one. Just enough to close the loop. The satisfaction of finishing. The way your body relaxes when you are in the story. The quiet pride of having kept a promise to yourself. Here is something important about rewards. They do not have to be big. In fact, they should not be. The brain does not need a trophy to encode a habit. It needs a small, consistent signal that says, that was worth it. Do that again. Sometimes the reward is simply the absence of the discomfort of not doing it. The sense of relief you feel when you have exercised. The way your mind clears when you meditate. The calm that follows the work you were avoiding. Pay attention to those feelings. They are the brain's way of reinforcing the loop. And do it at the same time, in the same place, triggered by the same cue. Every day. Consistency of context matters enormously. Research shows that behaviors performed in the same environment on a consistent schedule become automatic much faster than behaviors that happen in shifting contexts. Your brain learns from patterns. And context is part of the pattern. There is a second technique worth knowing. Habit stacking. It was described by James Clear in Atomic Habits. The idea is simple. Instead of starting a new habit from scratch, you attach it to a habit that already exists. The formula is, after I do X, I will do Y. After I make coffee, I will write 3 sentences. After I sit down at my desk, I will review my priorities. After I finish dinner, I will go for a short walk. The existing habit becomes the cue for the new one. You are not building a new trigger from nothing. You are piggybacking on a loop that is already automatic in your brain. This dramatically reduces the friction of starting. Because the cue is already firing. You just add a new response to it. There is a third principle that matters more than most people realize. Making it small. The biggest mistake people make when building habits is starting too big. Commit to an hour of exercise and you will skip it on hard days. Commit to 10 minutes and you will almost never miss. The goal in the early days is not to produce impressive results. The goal is to show up. To repeat the behavior. To keep the loop turning. Because the brain builds automaticity through repetition, not through effort. 10 minutes every day for 60 days builds a stronger habit than 2 hours once a week for a year. Frequency matters more than intensity. Showing up matters more than doing a lot. This is also why making it small helps you survive the inevitable bad days. There will be days when life is chaotic. When you are sick, tired, overwhelmed, or simply out of time. On those days, the habit you built around 10 minutes survives. The habit you built around an hour does not. And one of the most important insights from habit research is this. Missing one day does not break a habit. Missing 2 days in a row might. Not because of some rigid rule. But because 2 missed days is where a pattern of skipping starts to form. Where the habit begins to feel optional. Where you start to identify as someone who does not do that thing. 1 missed day is a detour. 2 missed days is a new direction. So when you miss, the one rule is simple. Never miss twice. Come back the next day. Even with a tiny version. Even for 5 minutes. Even just to say to your brain, this is still who I am. Let us also talk about identity. Because this is where habit building becomes something deeper. James Clear makes a point that has stayed with many people. He says most people focus on outcomes when trying to build habits. I want to lose weight. I want to read more. I want to be productive. But the most durable habits are not built around outcomes. They are built around identity. Not, I want to run a marathon. But, I am someone who runs. Not, I want to read more books. But, I am a reader. Not, I want to be healthier. But, I am someone who takes care of their body. The difference matters because behavior follows identity. When you see yourself as a runner, going for a run is not a discipline problem. It is just what you do. Every time you show up for a habit, you are casting a small vote for that identity. Every time you skip, you cast a vote against it. No single vote decides anything. But over hundreds of days, the votes accumulate. And the identity becomes real. You do not have to wait until you feel like a reader to start reading every day. You start reading every day and let the identity follow. That is how habits actually build. Not through willpower. Not through perfect days. Through repetition, context, small consistent actions, and the slow accumulation of evidence that you are becoming who you want to be. The brain is always learning. Always encoding. Always looking for patterns it can automate. Give it the right pattern to work with. Be patient with the process. Trust that the early hard days are building something invisible but real. Because one day, and you may not even notice when it happens, the behavior will stop feeling like an effort. The alarm goes off and you just get up. The cue fires and you just do it. The loop runs without you having to push. That is when you know the habit has formed. Not when you complete a streak. Not when someone notices the change. When it stops requiring a decision. One day at a time. One small action at a time. Until it no longer feels like discipline. Until it just feels like you. I hope this video brought you something meaningful. If you find it helpful, please like and share it with someone who may need it. Subscribe if you would like to hear more stories like this. Wishing you a calm and peaceful day.